All right. I think we are recording. I don't have my earphones today, so if you guys have, here's the camera, if you guys have a problem hearing me, just put it in the chat. But I want to be respectful of your time, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And it looks like we have a good portion of you guys here. Anyone else that comes on can join us as we come along. So thank you so much for joining. I know it's maybe lunchtime for some of you guys, but this is just such an important topic, I think, especially with what's happened recently in the world, in the US. And so I'm glad that we're being able to talk about it. As far as who I am, my name is Erin McClarity. And what I do is I help people use their superpowers to create the world that they want to live in. And what that looks like is people come to me and basically say, I want to do something positive. I don't know how, or I think I should do it this way, or I'm doing it this way. And what we do is we take a step back and we look at the impact that they're trying to have and develop something that is authentic to them using their passions and resources and desires and things that are really important to them. So this is something that's very close to my heart because more often than not, many people want to start charities and socially conscious businesses that are doing amazing things, but they're doing it in a way that isn't sustainable. So we're going to talk about how to do that. As far as reaching out and talking to me after this, if you have any questions, you can definitely visit my site at emcclaritypllc.com. I also have a blog, Notations on Nonprofits, where I post, and that's actually a misnomer. It does address business issues. So businesses, please check it out. But it's templates and resources, musings, education, legal updates, and different things that I come across that I think are important for people who are doing good. I also have a free beta community that I'm testing called Angel Entrepreneurs for those who want a community. Because what I've encountered so often is everyone that is doing some type of good, they're doing it in a way that's innovative, and people think they're weird. So I thought, why not just have a big old group of us weirdos? And what we do is when I'm growing it, but we share resources. I share case studies and different things, tools, grants, funding that I come across, and let's just share some of the issues that we're going through and the challenges that we're facing so that we don't feel like we're alone in the work that we're doing. And as far as what we'll be talking about today, be thinking about questions. There is a Q&A, if I see correctly, Q&A prompt, so you can be sending me questions throughout the presentation, and I'm going to address those at the very end. I'm actually going to try to move through this quickly so that we can get to you guys' questions because I get questions often. So as far as the importance of getting off the hamster wheel, I think if you're on the hamster wheel, you pretty much understand why it's so important to get right on back off of it. But the biggest thing is when you are specifically grants focused or donor focused, it's way too finicky. And it depends entirely on the sentiments and moods and seasonalities of the people that you are working with, especially with foundations. You may be a priority one year, but you may not be a priority the next year. Trying to continue those relationships can be really difficult. Not only that, you end up having those funders and sometimes the donors, their priorities end up driving the work that you do. And that doesn't necessarily always align with creating the best impact. So it's important from a getting off the hamster wheel, literally perspective, in terms of having to constantly engage with those relationships and being subject to things that are outside your control. It also is just an independence thing. More often than not, you guys are the experts and you know what is impactful and what isn't. And so if a funder is telling you to do one thing because of whatever bubble they're in, and that's what they're going to fund, you're in a conundrum in terms of whether you do subscribe to that and not necessarily have impact, or do you decide to go in a different direction and lose that funding. So important for that reason, and just diversification. If anything happens to one source, you always want to have other sources, and creating earned revenue streams is just an amazing way to bolster yourself so that even when you do have donations and grants that are coming in, if there's a blip, if something gets pulled, if, the government shuts down and you don't get those grants, then you have your earned income that can help subsidize that. So as far as the process, the way I've broken this down is I'm going to talk a little bit about brainstorming and ways to kind of get yourselves into the mindset, because not everyone, when they're doing socially conscious work, are in the mindset of making money. Then I'm going to talk about some efficiencies to put in place, because sometimes it's not just making more money, it's saving the money that you've already got coming in. And then a couple of ideas to get you thinking, because a lot of times people say, well, I need some examples. So we'll go through that, and then some things to be careful about and some resources that I think will be helpful. The biggest thing I want to carry across is, so often when I'm talking to clients and people who are doing some type of social impact or social good, when you start talking about making money, they cringe and they shirk, and it's like, but it's not about the money. But it is, because if you're not making money, you're not having impact. And if you're having to work on a shoestring budget and you're not able to upgrade in terms of technology, you're not able to leverage different partnerships, you're not able to avail yourself of opportunity, you're not able to grow, then what's the point of it all? So no, the point in and of itself is not money. I agree entirely with that. Should you be making money at the expense of? Absolutely not. However, the point is to make money and to make more money, because with more money, you have more impact, or that's at least the hope. So I just kind of want to take a second for us to cleanse ourselves of that attitude in terms of thinking that we can't make money or money is bad. It's not the money itself, it's the way it's been used and the way that it's been earned over the years. So that's a start, because that's going to color the rest of this experience that you have if you're thinking, oh, but money, it's such an evil, I don't want to do that. No, it's not evil, it's a good. So as far as brainstorming, to get your creative juices going, really the key to coming up with new earned revenue streams is creativity. It's thinking outside the box. It's the brainstorming process. And one of the greatest books I've read on getting your creative juices going is A More Beautiful Question. And what he does is he breaks it out by why, how, what. By asking more questions, really just kind of looking around in our environment and asking questions about why things are the way that they are and why they aren't different than what they are, that allows us to start thinking about possible solutions. It allows us to start thinking about ways of handling it that we may not have otherwise been thinking about. I would not sit down and put yourself in a box and start trying to brainstorm. You've got to keep it as open as humanly possible, or otherwise you're not going to have that innovation that's going to be really key to coming up with something creative. So for example, one of the case studies he talks about in the book, A More Beautiful Question, is Pandora, where the question was, one of the gentlemen who happened to be in the A&R and music industry just kept saying the same problem. Why is it that indie artists who have fans can never connect with those fans? And consequently, they can't grow in terms of their exposure and the money they bring in and their gigs, because they're not getting that visibility in terms of fans. And he just kept asking himself, why is it that they can't connect? And then the what if there was a platform that allowed indie and young artists and bands to connect with their fans in an easier way? And then the next part of that is how would that look? And so he went through a couple different options, and what he came up with was another thing they call cross-pollination. So he plucked ideas from other parts of the world, other industries, and came up with the whole DNA model. So he encoded music in a way that would allow it to come up with these little genomes, so that when we logged in, basically as we started to push and show that we liked, he would have other things that were in that same genome. He could say, okay, well, if you like this, then you would like this. And it made itself smarter and smarter and smarter. So that's just that's an example of a why, how, what. Why is it that people can't connect to an indie or young artist? What if there was a platform that allowed them to do that? How would that happen? So with your own organizations, it may be, why is it that these people can't get access to or can't connect to these other people? What if there was a platform or a way for them to do that? How would that end up looking? Would be a great way to start brainstorming. Another way that you can start brainstorming is be thinking about your existing customers. So you probably have customers right now. I hope you have customers right now. For you nonprofits, you may even, or really you socially conscious businesses too, you might even have customers and beneficiaries. The customers are going to be the ones who are paying for it. Beneficiaries may not necessarily be paying for it. So be thinking about the existing customers. Be thinking about potential customers that you could have. Then do a journey map. I'm a huge fan of the journey map. And what that is sit down and think about the entire journey that they go through to get from A to B. So part of this could be, education. What is the journey that a student goes through from senior year in high school to getting into a college? recently did this for a client. The journey is major. And what we discovered was that in that journey, we basically said, okay, this is what they go through. Then I had the client identify what are the pain points. Is it access to grants? Is it accountability? Someone making sure that they keep up with their applications? Is it knowledge about what kind of colleges are out there, opportunities and training programs? So we sat down and we went through the pain points that the students had, that they identified, that she noticed that they had. Then I said, well, what solutions could you offer for this? So we sat down and we said, okay, could you offer a solution to the grants? Could you offer a solution to the accessibility? Could you offer a solution to the accountability? Could it be some text messages or things that you send through to remind people about application deadlines coming up? Is there a solution here? And then when we came up with the solutions, we looked at what are ways that you might be able to monetize. So the key here is that she can't do everything. So we didn't choose every solution that she came up with, but what she could look at was, okay, on this spectrum, this continuum of the journey, I've identified the pain points. Here are solutions to those pain points. In those solutions, this is where my expertise lies. Oh, it turns out that I can help with maybe the grant application, the grants access, because it turns out I have people over here who help with grants. And then a way to monetize that might be charging those people to have access to these students that I have plenty of access to for no charge. So that's kind of an example of whittling down and just thinking about what is a journey that your customers are going through, or potential customers that you could be working with are going through. What are their pain points, and what are the solutions and opportunities for you based on your expertise and resources and knowledge to be able to monetize that? Another example is, in Africa, there's just, I guess it's I think it's the largest in terms of aid. Phenomenal amount of, I don't know if I wouldn't say phenomenal, but anyways, large amount of aid and service providers coming in. And so what happens is if you have a large funder or even a government funder that's going into Africa, they can get all lost into the noise. And so it may be that that's an opportunity for a potential customer. So what you would do is you would sit down and you say, okay, for someone who's looking to get into this specific country in Africa, this is a journey that they would go through to try to fund and do that. These are the pain points. Figuring out who's trustworthy, getting somebody on the ground with boots who has knowledge, someone to do trust building, someone to do this, that, and the other. And out of those pain points, here are possible solutions for that. And looking at what we've done and how we have experienced, this is ways that we might be able to monetize providing these solutions. So that's another example. Let's see, making sure there's no questions as I'm going through this. None yet, okay. Where am I at? So another thing that you can do is be thinking about the resources that you currently have, leveraging what you currently have. So for example, I have a lot of clients who do education. They may have a daycare center or some type of early childhood center in which they're picking up kids. And so their van may be used in the morning and it may be used in the afternoon. There's several hours there that van may not be used and it's just sitting there. So there's a concept in business where you basically detach the value of this thing from how you currently use it. So for them, the van was solely a way for them to be able to pick up their kids and to drop off their kids. But what if the van in and of itself was a business opportunity? What if they were to portion out hours in which people would be able to use that van? Maybe their colleagues who don't want to make the expense and purchase their own van. What if they themselves did their own service where they picked up and dropped off for other colleagues? Is there a way that that van could be utilized and it's off hours where it normally would just be sitting there, and that's an additional earned revenue stream? Same thing for businesses that have servers. Oftentimes the servers will have peaks, maybe in the morning, maybe around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then it definitely has dives, especially in the evening, the server is just sitting there. Is that an opportunity for you to leverage that server to possibly have give access to someone who doesn't want to make that capital expense, an entrepreneur or really small business who needs hosting space and may want to do that locally, but doesn't necessarily want to invest in that equipment? You're seeing a great example of this with restaurants. There's a startup here in Houston, and I wish I could remember their name. They're very well known, but what they've done is they've been able to leverage restaurants to use their downtime. So what happens is, the restaurants may be closed from, they may open from 11 to 9 or whatever the case may be. They may not be open on Sundays. What the startup does is say, okay, if you're not open on Sundays, why don't we still run something in that space and you get paid for use of it, but maybe we do it at a lower cost. So we make it accessible to nonprofits or other organizations who may not be able to subsidize it at the costs that you would charge during peak hours when your business was actually open. So looking at resources that you have currently, really assets. I would start with assets. What assets do you have currently that you're not using? Is it transportation? Is it some equipment? Another example that I've been reading about is hospital systems are getting smart, and with their MRI systems, they're saying, okay, we've only got several people booked today. Why not open that up and allow other hospitals to be able to use those MRIs when we're not necessarily using them? So be thinking about assets that you're not necessarily using, that have downtime, that you might be able to rent out or provide access to someone else. Knowledge. There may be knowledge. I think we underestimate the power of knowledge. If you have expertise in getting people on the ground, if you have expertise in activism, if you have expertise in convening, if you have expertise in corrective action, if you have expertise in trust building, these are things people want, especially larger conglomerate corporations. And there are consultants getting paid quite a bit of money to do that. So why not leverage that expertise? If you're wonderful at convening and creating community and trust building, that's basically what every corporate retreat is all about. So are these things that you can leverage? Could you have folks from your organization provide seminars or consult for the retreats in a way that, again, would earn income revenue? Bonus points, could you tie in the work that you're doing currently with doing that? So for example, there was a client of mine who does community building and volunteering. And what we did is we basically said, there's these for-profit startups starting up all over the place that are trying to do CSR platforms and create community building platforms. But you guys are the OGs. You've been doing it for 20 years now. You need to get in on this. And so what we did is we aligned her as a consultant for corporations that were interested in doing some type of community building. So not only can she do community building exercises within the corporation and help them with that, but then she was also able to leverage her organization and say, oh, and we have these opportunities that we can present to you if you guys wanted to do something at the food bank or something with a local organization. So that's an opportunity as well. So knowledge, assets, access in general. Do you have access to individuals that people might want to have access to? Do you have access to data that people might want to have access to? Then data can be tricky. A lot of people ask me about that. And so that's something that you would need to talk to your counsel about. But it's an opportunity. So be thinking about that. Do we have access to certain individuals, certain demographics, certain communities that people are trying to have access to that we would be able to monetize for? So for example, there's a group that I'm working with now that's creating a platform for business entrepreneurs. There's all kinds of people who want access to business entrepreneurs, specifically entrepreneurs of color. So it may be an opportunity on the back end of this platform, while we will be doing education and assisting the entrepreneurs themselves, an earned revenue stream would be to charge people who want to have access to these folks on the back end, or to create disaggregated data. So basically data that doesn't identify anyone, but still identifies trends and opportunities, gives feedback. There may be feedback these entrepreneurs have that would be interesting to businesses that have some type of B2B. So those are opportunities to create earned income too. And then you also may have access to networks or individuals or even government. A lot of my socially conscious businesses have, really tight relationships with government actors or with celebrities and other individuals. And so that may be something that you would be able to charge for as well. So what I would do is sit down with all this information, sit down with what assets may I have? What access may I have? Is there data that I'm collecting? Is there research that I'm doing that may be beneficial? Are there people that I'm engaging, demographics or communities that I have access to that I may be able to monetize? Now, I'm not suggesting exploitation. So certainly most of these communities are in the situation that they're in because they have been exploited. So that is not at all what I am suggesting. What I am saying is oftentimes, like with the business entrepreneur example, one of the things we're talking about is feedback. Feedback is important for us because we want to build out this platform. The feedback, again, is really important for those who have some type of service that they give to business entrepreneurs. And so that's something that wouldn't be exploiting them, but would be an opportunity for the client that I'm working with to make some more earned revenue. So not at all saying that we should exploit, just to be clear on that. And so once you sit down and you think about what assets do I have, what access do I have, what knowledge, be brainstorming on a business model. So you see this word bandied about. Essentially what it is how are you packaging the thing and selling it is a business model. How are you packaging the thing and how are you selling it? So great example that you've probably heard a lot is Netflix. Their business model is a subscription model. I think everyone right now is doing a subscription model. I was actually reading, as an aside, the average person pays $237 a month in subscriptions, which I have myself seen is not that hard when you think about the fact that you've got Amazon Prime and all of it. Anyways, so it's a really smart business model because you're only paying $5 and then you pay $5 20 times and you're like, oh, that's a lot of money. So Netflix is a subscription model. What they do is they have a platform, you have access to that platform, but you get deducted every month for having access. Printers, their business model is they're going to sell you at a very low end the printer. So we've seen the price of printers just drop exponentially, super cheap. You see them for $60. What's expensive? The printer cartridges, right? And I feel like they've gotten even more expensive. So what's happened is printers have decided we're going to hook you. We're going to get you hooked in by selling you this amazing finazly printer. And then we're going to get you when you got to be able to buy the printer cartridges. So that's their business model. Business model for airlines and cars is what? We're going to give you a basic model. So we'll give you a basic seat. We'll give you a basic car. And then we're going to charge you for the add-ons, right? So if you want, like ABS or seatbelts, I joke. But, if you want, and sometimes a nice radio, a nicer radio, or even automatic windows power windows is probably a standard now. But I remember when power windows was like a thing in terms of upgrades. So that was how they made their money. I'm going to give you a book later on that has 55 different business models that you can look at and test and play with, because business models is still a different concept for a lot of people. And so they can have trouble trying to think of it. But basically, be thinking about how can I package what it is that I'm doing and sell it. So you may do a lot of research and you may decide my business model is just to sell a product. So I'm going to package into a white paper and then I'm going to send it out. But you may also decide that you would do some type of subscription. So what we'll do is, as we're developing research, we may send out a newsletter, trends, kind of like Warren Buffett does, to people who are really interested, who want to be in the know. And, to be a part of this newsletter, you've got to pay something monthly. So there's different ways to package different things. You might also break down that knowledge and just have like a question bank or an information bank, and then you charge access to the bank. And maybe people to get access to that platform is free initially, but then to get access to more extensive research would be behind a paywall. So there's different ways to do it, but that's going to be a key, is be thinking about your business model. So really quickly, something else I want to point out is it's not only just about bringing in more money, so bringing in more earned revenue, is often keeping a hold of the revenue that you currently have. Most socially conscious businesses and nonprofits I work with do way too much for way too many people, and they do it out of the kindness of their hearts. And I completely understand the rationale behind doing it. The problem is you bog yourself down and you end up spending really powerful man hours doing things for free. And so that's something else that we have to get out of, is doing way too much for free. I think also in the world of Google and the freemium model, everyone feels inclined to just give things away. Give away my knowledge, give away my expertise, give away. And to a certain extent, I don't think access should be limited. Access should continue to be something. But I'm pretty certain you paid for a master's degree. I'm pretty certain you've paid for education. I'm pretty certain you've paid for a lot of things to amass what you have. So it doesn't really make sense to give that away for free, right? I'm pretty certain you put a lot of time into a lot of the work that you do with the folks you're working with, and it doesn't make sense to give that away for free. So What I suggest you do is you sit down and you write out everything that you do, every single thing that you do, and then start grouping these together and be thinking about ways that you can delegate, especially things that require really high touch. So it may be follow-ups. If you have a lot of volunteers and people that are coming in, maybe that's something that you hire an intern or someone to do on your behalf so that you can spend more time doing management and coming up with opportunities for earned revenue or doing things that allow for earned revenue. There may be things that you're particularly fond of. Again, if you do want to be able to, for example, follow up, maybe there's a way to standardize it, put it into an email, make it a workflow automation. I know that was something I continue to work really hard on is with my emails and with my processes. I have a platform now to where I click a button and there's a template, and what it does is it walks you through the process based on the work that we're doing. So if we're doing some type of formation, it knows, okay, we start here, and then once we're done with that, we move here and we move here, so that I'm not having to do that all myself. What I suggest you do if you don't is get a better understanding of where your time is going and where you may be inefficient. Toggle is a great resource, Toggl, and just start keeping track of the time you spend. How much time do you spend on correspondence? How much time do you spend tracking down volunteers that said that they were going to help? How much time do you spend tracking down beneficiaries and trying to follow up with them? And as you start to look and see what that time looks like, be thinking of ways to be more efficient. Is it that we can group that together? Is there maybe a feedback group that I could do collectively with all my beneficiaries once a month? Or is it certain home visits, and can I tie those in with other things? That's something I bring up with a lot of people is efficiency of our time, because I feel like we're not very efficient with our time because we want to help everyone and we want to save the world as quickly as possible. Also, do equipment shares. Not everything has to be ours. And sometimes we have to learn how to play in the sandbox. And I struggle with that myself, but it's really important. For example, I'm in my WeWork co-working space. To make my services affordable, it didn't make sense for me to be in a really snazzy office by myself. So I rent out a space with them. My clients love it. I have community. And so that was something that made sense. We have in Houston a group of theaters that what they did is they came together and built out a theater space that they all share. I thought that was an amazing idea, because what is something that's not used consistently? A theater. So why have it to where you build out your own theater space that sits for a predominant, grouping of time, even if it's a matter of renting it out? So basically, they have an arrangement where they share this space, and they've also shared the costs with maintenance and everything else that's associated with it. So that's an opportunity too, is to just have a space that everyone builds out and they share the costs together. Same thing for equipment. It may be a server. Doesn't make sense for you to purchase a server on your own. So a group of you purchase a server and you share it and partition in ways that, of course, keeps your data private and doesn't disseminate any sensitive information, but again, allows you to split out those costs. So be thinking about ways to be efficient as you're thinking about ways to bring in more money. Doing it on time. And again, be thinking about questions, because I'm going to be answering those in about 10 minutes here. So a few ideas on monetization, because everyone, again, says, okay, I need examples. And I'm going to give you examples of what clients and I have come up with. One is, can you align yourself to basically like a B Labs, which I thought was a brilliant idea, because when you think about it, they're basically a good housekeeping seal for good people, right? And so I saw a case study of this that I thought was really interesting, where this group of women empowered small farmers because, a lot of times access to market is a big thing. Coffee, access to the people who produce and who sell and package and all of that is a big thing. But they often get exploited by those individuals because they don't understand pricing, they don't understand the market, they don't understand what things are. So what these women have done is they basically said, we're going to do some type of seal for the people who want to purchase from the farmers, from those who are producing coffee. That way, you farmer or coffee producer, you're able to I think it's on your phone, because of course everybody has phones now. You can log in, and if you have different people that you can sell to, you can see, okay, who's had a track record of disenfranchising, who's had a track record of exploiting. this has grown exponentially. I forget the number of people that they're now certifying, but it's kind of a thing. And what the marketers and distributors and everyone else is realizing is they're now at a disadvantage, because if they have a record of having exploited, or if they have a record of treating people badly, that as the market expands, people have opportunities to sell elsewhere, I'm not going to deal with you. And now distributors and people are reaching out to these women to have themselves certified, so that when they go up on the platform or when they're marketing to consumers, they can say, look, we have a good track record and they've certified that. So maybe if you're in some type of a field of expertise, I have a couple of clients I've dealt with that are in health and safety or in the medical profession or something like that. Could you do a seal? Could you be certifying people and letting people know, yeah, this is a safe space, or this is a good space, or these are people who are aligning themselves with best practices? Can you create a database of connections? If there's anyone that has mastered connections, it is socially conscious businesses and nonprofits. It's so interesting to me to see all these, again, startups that are trying to monetize the space. And it's like, nonprofits were the OGs. They were doing this. They just didn't monetize it. So as you guys are making connections, as you're getting that network access, maybe create an Excel spreadsheet, maybe something more sophisticated than that, but start keeping track and be thinking about, again, is this something that we can monetize? Can we monetize this information? Could it be a directory? Is there a way that we might be able to matchmake? Or can we work with a partner who maybe they do the matchmaking so that we don't have to get away from our mission, but they have access to a continuing database and connection source that we then charge a license fee for? So, if you're going to be making all these connections, especially community connections, if you have a list of all the people, the activists to know in, the United States or in a specific city, like, why not make that list accessible? Why not make, some money off of that? Same thing if you're collecting research. White papers are a big thing now. It's a great way to brand yourself. It's a great way to make yourself an expert in a field. Charge for that. You don't have to charge $30, $40. You may even just charge $5 or $7 per download, but that's $5 or $7 you wouldn't otherwise have gotten for information that you're already aggregating. And again, it doesn't have to be an illuminated Bible. In fact, I recommend it not be. Make it small, maybe a couple of pages, 7 pages with some infographics, make it look really nice, and, have people download it for $5 or $7 a pop. So that's an opportunity. Let's see what else. I have a bunch of examples here. I just want to make sure I'm respectful of everybody's time. We have about 10 minutes here. Oh, referral arrangement. So again, if you're going to have connections, or if you're already making out referrals, and a lot of you guys are making referrals out, why not monetize? It may not be that you monetize on the referral exactly. So, we're working with the homeless. It may not necessarily work in some instances to monetize on the front end, but you may be able to monetize on the back end. So be looking at the referrals that you make, especially when you're making referrals to corporations, businesses, and other folks that have the money to be able to pay for that, and think about ways to pay for it. Or is it just that you create a platform where you have all these people engaged, and then they have access to that platform, people would end up having to pay for it. So, is there a referral fee, even if it's nominal, that you could be charging so that people, one, know that it's quality and do make sure that it's quality, but two, that you're creating, a little bit of revenue off of something that you're going to be doing anyway. Because that's something else I didn't bring up. It's important to keep in mind. A lot of people, when we think earn revenue, they think, okay, if I'm not bringing in millions of dollars, it's not worthwhile. That's not true. If I can create a monetization stream over here and then another one over here and a small one here, all of that absolutely adds up. So just be looking for opportunities, things that you're already doing. You're doing them for free anyway. So there's nothing wrong with seeing, is there an opportunity for me to actually be making this an earned revenue stream? In fact, with my referrals, maybe my referrals will be more quality if I charge them. Maybe I would be able to do follow-ups and buy resources to be able to support those referrals through the process if I were charging for them, rather than just throwing out referrals for free because I don't have the bandwidth because I'm busy trying to do 800 other things. So don't necessarily think that an earned revenue stream is something that has to be ginormous. It can be something relatively small, and then these things start to add up over time. In fact, that's what creates resiliency. I wouldn't create just this one giant earned revenue stream. I would create them in different places so that if this is down, we have this, and if this is down, we have this, and then we also have grants and donations, and we have this that we're doing and sponsorships. and that's the diversity that you're looking for. We talked about monetizing groups that people want access to. I used entrepreneurs as an example. Create an online community. Oftentimes you guys are doing community building anyway. So online community is a phenomenal opportunity for a few reasons. One, it aggregates. Two, it creates a test pool. So when I say aggregates, it creates a centered and focused way for you to be able to communicate with people rather than having to manage these maddening MailChimp campaigns and sending out to all these different lists. Now we have a targeted group. We can pilot different ideas. We can get concerted feedback quicker. We can do all of this much sooner. So we can pilot sooner. We can get feedback sooner. We can measure it sooner, that whole lean startup, and get things out quicker. And it may be something that you can, also it creates followers, it creates leads. The hope is to maybe make this something that's viral, so you would be able to access people you may not normally access, because it may not be that they're attracted to what you're offering directly, but they may be attracted to your community. And so it may be a way to bring people in who aren't necessarily directly aligned, but are in the general sphere of the work that you're doing. And it's something that could possibly be monetized. And so something could be, okay, we have a general community, it's free, we have resource shares, but if you want some type of curation, if you want, genuine connection, then that's something that we're going to charge for. Maybe we put that behind a paywall, maybe we charge an extra service. Great example of this was LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is what? A free online networking platform. But what they did is they built out from there. Once they had the mass and the bandwidth, they were like, all right, we're going to come up with mechanisms to charge. So if you want to have, this conversation with this person, we're going to charge for that. We'll have like a pro. So we'll have our free and we'll have our pro. And now we've got this gigantic community of professionals. Who needs to work with professionals? Recruiters. So we're going to charge them on the back end to have access. I saw recently that they've acquired the Lynda platform. So now they have an education tool. They had SlideShare that they acquired. So, while we have all these professionals, what do they need? They need development. So we'll build this out. You don't have to build it out as extensive as that, but if you have a community, again, it may be, okay, we'll have our general community, we'll get them hooked, we'll give them updates, we'll do, building and trust building, and then we'll also talk generally about the issues that are important to us and cultivate some conversation around that. But if this is a space you're really into and you're really interested, we'll have a pro, or we'll create some really engaging content with experts, and then we'll charge for that content. So those are all opportunities. And then lastly, in terms of things to be careful about, you don't want to create too much friction. So be careful with where you charge. And if you're a nonprofit, always keep your 501c3 status top of mind. So you definitely don't want to do things that are unrelated to a large extent, because that is something that could jeopardize your exemption status. What I will say, though, is keep in mind, you can always be flexible with your entity status, or with your entity structure. So it may be that you have your nonprofit, but then you have a for-profit under your nonprofit. Kaboom is a wonderful example of this, the playgrounds, where they had the playgrounds that they were building out for people, but they also had people who said, well, you know what, we have the money to build our playgrounds, we just don't know how. So they created a consulting business. And the consulting business would go out to these communities that could subsidize their own playground. They just needed expertise around it. Turned out the consulting business did gangbusters. So rather than jeopardizing their 501c3 status and really distracting from that mission, they pulled that out and put it into a for-profit subsidiary that fell under nonprofit. I do that with many of my clients because I think there's nothing wrong with leveraging this revenue source and allowing that to be another way to subsidize the work that you're doing while doing something that you're passionate about and we're doing anyway and being paid for it. So there's some flexibility there. You can have a for-profit parent, you can have them side by side, so don't feel constrained there. And if you're a socially conscious business, don't greenwash. Right? So don't present something as helping the community when you're in fact exploiting them, because that's going to make it all just go down the drain. So with the last few minutes, because I think I have this for 45 minutes, business tools, books and resources. The Lean Entrepreneur is a great book to look into. I know a lot of people don't see themselves as an entrepreneur. You are. And you may not align with that term, but the tools and resources in that book are really, really helpful. So check that out. Business Model Generator is the one that you've probably seen the most. It has the canvas. There's a business model canvas you fill out. It's very businessy. There's a social business model canvas that I'm happy to send the link out to if anybody is interested in. Just shoot me an email or message me through the Big Marker platform if you want. But read Business Model Generator and just kind of go through it. The reason I like it is actually Strategizer is STRATEGYZER, has a whole platform with just a ton of worksheets and different things you can work through. So they help you figure out what's your value proposition. In other words, how are you benefiting people? Because way too many nonprofits, especially because they're funder focused and not consumer or beneficiary focused, cannot communicate what their value is clearly. Why is it that people, anyone, should pay you or give you money to be able to do the work that you're doing? And so go to that, because that may, those materials, it may not translate directly. It may not seem like it does, but it does. So value proposition sounds businessy, but you do need to know your value proposition. Key channels is another one that people are like, I don't. But key channels is basically who are you utilizing? Partners are you utilizing to be able to get out the work that you're doing? You absolutely need to understand that. And so they have worksheets on that. When you talk about understanding and developing problems, the Innovators Method is a great book on that. So just better understanding how do we come up with or identify and observe problems out in the world, and then how do we come up with solutions? So it may be that you don't identify a problem right now, but you want to be able to start looking out for it and developing solutions for it. The Innovators Method walks you through that process. And then lastly, the Business Model Navigator is the one that has the 55 different business models that you can use and toy and play with to be able to come up with an idea around what your business model should end up looking like. So I ran through that because I wanted to get this in, and I did. It's 11:41, so we have 4 minutes, and I see there is a few questions that came in. I won't be able to get to them all, but let's see here. Okay, so one of them was about what do we do as a nonprofit? And I mentioned that definitely don't jeopardize your 501c3 exemption status, but look at ways of being creative. You can have unrelated business income, for one. So it's not that you can't have it, you can't have substantive amounts. Now, what is that? IRS is a little slick on that. They don't give you a number. 16% is what has been bandied about, but it just depends. If it gets to a point where you're even worried about it, then it may be worthwhile to pull it out and have that for profit, but you can have some unrelated business income. It's just taxed. So rather than being not taxed, it's going to be taxed, and there's a Schedule T that you'll end up filing for that. Keep in mind, be creative. Girl Scouts, the cookies, are not unrelated business income. That is a multi-million-dollar business for them, and it is not unrelated business income because they were slick. And they looked at the requirements, it has to be something unrelated, trade or business unrelated that's consistently carried on, that's not directly related to the mission. And there's one other. It's not consistently carried on. So you notice they only do it, I think they do it more. It used to be once, I think, a year, and now it's like once or twice. But they don't do it regularly, and they've tied it into entrepreneurship, which is tied into their mission. So you can be creative with this in terms of what qualifies as unrelated income. But I always tell people, think of that. This is a multi-million, it has built Girl Scouts for those cookies, and that is not unrelated business income that has jeopardized their exemption status. So there is hope for you yet if you're a nonprofit. Then there's a question here about building business model. Oh, so when your beneficiaries can't afford it. So Acumen, which is a social impact investor that you may have heard of, they have free classes on just that. I love their classes. They do human-centered design, which I think everyone should have to take, but they also do marketing and selling to, they say bottom of the pyramid, which I don't like. But what they're saying basically is for those beneficiaries that wouldn't necessarily be able to afford, how do we make sure that our services are affordable for them? And how do we make sure that we're sustainable? Something that I would say is be creative with the customers in terms of who that is. So it may be your beneficiary isn't your customer, but the government may be your customer. I think we saw no better example than recently where the government cannot step in and is not stepping in on many things. And so if that's something that they can't necessarily handle, but is absolutely having an economic impact on the city, state, or locale, then is that something that you can pick up, and can you monetize doing that on behalf of the government? Same thing when it comes to businesses. Governments are finicky in terms of risk. And so you're hearing a lot about the social impact bond, pay for purpose. Look that up if you haven't, as a means of getting in with governments and testing things so that the governments will feel less risk adverse in terms of doing new stuff. But that's an opportunity too. Minute to spare. Thank you so much, guys, for joining. Hopefully you found this helpful. Please do shoot back your feedback in the follow-up that you're going to get. I love learning how I can better support the work that you're doing. And do check out the blog if you haven't had an opportunity to do so. And I hope you guys have a good weekend. Thank you again.